Hey friends, thanks for joining me, Jim Barut, to hear a few insights from leaders who represent our innovation ecosystem. Today's chat is with Corey Sanders, the Senior Vice President of Product at CoreWeave. He was previously at Microsoft for over 20 years.
I grew up in New Jersey. I grew up in Parsippany, which was great. Went to high school in Parsippany, when I graduated high school, I got lucky enough to get accepted into Princeton, so I went to Princeton. So stayed in the state, which was great actually. Stayed in New Jersey, and my original desire actually when went to Princeton was that I was going to be an aerospace engineer because I wanted to go to space. Ironically, which we can maybe talk about if those skills could apply to me later in my journey at CoreWeave. But I took my first computer science class and was in love, and so I ended up just immediately deciding I wanted to be a computer science engineer. Did a lot of fun stuff. Princeton was great I studied Japanese. I studied a bunch of Shakespeare. But computer science was my journey. I, again, lucky enough to get an internship at Microsoft, and then started full time after college. I worked at Microsoft for 20 years, so I actually moved out to Seattle. Sort of did my New Jersey hiatus for about 10 years out in Seattle, and worked on various jobs. I worked fixed bugs in Windows. I worked on the original product of Azure, which was really awesome. Did that for about 10 of those 20 years, so that was a great experience. I worked in the field, so I did some sales, which turns out I wasn't very good at. So then I went back and did more product work before then I left. And after leaving, I ended up getting to know one of the co-founders of CoreWeave pretty well. We met at Roots and Summit, which is where I moved back to after returning back from Seattle. And he ended up saying, "Hey, do you want to come in work at CoreWeave?" And I said, "Sure. Like, I'd love to go think through product and strategy for the company." And so offices in Livingston, so a easy commute, and great to be able to have the opportunity to work here.
Oh, that's a great journey, and the fact that you went out west to Microsoft, what a great experience, right? And then to come back to Jersey is a wonderful story. And Summit is a wonderful town, as you know.
I love Summit. Love Summit. Yeah, it's great. Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
So things are moving at light speed. You've been on this rocket ship the past few years. So tell us, what's it feel like, right? For those of us who are not in the thick of it, what's it feel like to be working at one of those rocket ships?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, look, I would say we are at one of the biggest technology shifts in decades, and we're sort of in the middle of it, and CoreWeave is in the middle of it, which is really fantastic. It is such an awesome experience to be able to be designing and thinking through the products that will make AI applications easier to develop, easier to deploy, and that's really where I think CoreWeave is really growing into. Obviously, its history starting off with some of the co-founders working in crypto mining, and now to the point where we are the AI cloud, right? It's offering sort of a bunch of AI services, and so being at the forefront of delivering those capabilities is just really sort of invigorating. I mean, it's just so exciting to see what customers are going to build, what they're going to do. And it brings me back actually to my early days at Microsoft, right? My early days at Microsoft when Azure was coming out, one of the biggest things with our focus there was which I think is any sort of platform offering, you think so much more about what are the customers going to be able to do with what you're building than necessarily what you're building it's directly, right? Like it's, there's no end consumer working on CoreWeave, right? Like it's all through someone else, right? But so then it's all about how do you make the platform such that those end customers are able to go do their amazing work, right? And with CoreWeave today, it's primarily, 9 out of 10 of the top model builders all use our platform. And so like, what are they doing? How are they changing the world? Cursor being a big one, like how are they enabling sort of people to think differently about coding? And so those types of customers, even down to like enterprise, Mercado Libre, and sort of thinking through their entire retail business, that is what I love. It's why I feel like platform is always the right place for me, because I get so inspired by other people's inspiration and other people's creativity, and I'm just sort of there as a tool to make it easier for them to get that done.
Yeah, for sure. And you've seen a lot, right? Obviously, with Microsoft, you saw their investment in OpenAI, and how that's developed. And we could probably spend another 2 hours just on that alone. But I'd be
That's
curious
right.
to
Or
get,
days. We could spend days on that, Jim, if you want. But
yes,
no, it's
yes.
not.
I mean, just
Yeah.
so does that? Can you just maybe opine on that just a little bit on that sort of that development, which sort of kicked off this race, as I mentioned, and these advances that are going at light speed. And has that developed the way you would have predicted, or is everything just such a surprise?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I did have the benefit of actually meeting the OpenAI folks well before actually the ChatGPT explosion, because they're deploying on the platform, and I had some engagements with them on sort of making sure the platforms delivered what they needed in those early days. But I would say I was definitely not on the forefront of that explosion. But once it did happen, everything at Microsoft changed. I mean, and I would say the world, right? But like living within the microcosm of Microsoft, it was this fundamental shift of every single application, every single service we're going to shift to how we think about this in this new era. And so that was what a great experience. And I was a key component, or I got to the benefit of being a key component in thinking through how are we going to deliver all this infrastructure? How are we going to deliver all these AI services? And that translated even into now what I get to do here at CoreWeave, which is thinking through that, but in some ways even a higher level of vertical integration, right? How do I think through the full metal to job technology stack to be able to optimize the infrastructure underneath so that we're building what we need to and not anything more, and still make it super easy for people to be able to build, because this stuff is hard. I mean, that would probably be the biggest thing that shifted differently than I expected. That initial explosion of GPT and sort of the market getting fairly crowded in sort of model creation and which model's best, and then the open source model market. Like, I think I sort of feel like I expected that. I expected a little bit of maybe more consolidation by this point, but I expected a lot of this kind of ongoing fight over whose model is best and for what. The part that I've been surprised by, to be honest, Jim, is the complexity and challenge for the broader base of customers and enterprises to use it, right? I think you look around at sort of where AI is actually taking off, and yeah, sure, everybody's got like an agent on their website, right? And so that's kind of expected. But the actual integration of AI deep into the product from every single company in the world, I think is still pretty slow. Like we still haven't seen that happen, right? And I do think part of that is the capabilities, sort of the approaching the concept of continual improvement. We call it an AI loop here at CoreWeave, and the services to be able to deliver upon that. And I think that's going to be a big differentiator in sort of thinking through fully from the GPU to those managed services and how customers can get the benefit.
Right. And just for those folks who don't know what CoreWeave is, can you sort of give us a sense for what you folks do, and what your footprint is now, and where do you see the company in 5 years?
Yeah, absolutely. So, CoreWeave, we talk about CoreWeave as being an AI cloud, right? It is a large scale provider of infrastructure to services. We have more than 50 data centers worldwide, so a very large footprint. A very high amount of that is GPUs, but it certainly includes a whole bunch of storage and CPU as well, and then a bunch of the services that sit on top, including sort of development services like our weights and biases tooling that allow people to build models on top of that infrastructure, our inference service that allow people to run their applications on top of our infrastructure. And so really, like, in some ways, the best way to think about it is like any other big cloud that also has a whole bunch of these data centers, except our focus is exclusively on AI applications and AI workflows, allowing us to, in some ways, shed some of the legacy of sort of non-AI workloads and really focus on delivering upon this new generation. And that's why I think CoreWeave is so well positioned with this technology shift to sort of be a central point in delivering these capabilities.
Got it. And 5 years from now, where is CoreWeave?
Yeah, I mean, I think, look, the growth has been stunning. And so I think with that continued trajectory, certainly the growth will continue to be stunning from just an overall infrastructure provided. And a big part of that is just the demand has been insatiable, right? We certainly don't build data centers without customers screaming for the capacity, and those customers being, OpenAI or Anthropic or Meta or Google or so on. So that demand continues, and so we will continue to deliver upon that capacity. And then I think we will continue to expand from our services in being able to deliver easier to use deployment and continual loop or AI loop development processes. Like, I think as we see the rest of the enterprise market and really just the rest of the application market start shifting towards mission critical apps, always have some AI. If they're not primarily AI, we will start seeing a greater shift towards those higher level services in their usage. And I think over 5 years, that becomes a predominant component of our business.
Oh, really? Oh, okay. That's fascinating. What about, we hear some flack and opposition to data centers, right? And I know there's some things that people get wrong as far as the water usage, which isn't as nearly as much as people say. Can we dispel some or explain some the reality here so that people can get a better idea of what the challenges are?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and look, I think, Jim, there's the biggest complexity with some of the concerns around data center is there's not a single data center provider, right? Like there's a bunch who are building this infrastructure, and just like anything with this type of approach, right? I would argue the bad actors are the people who are not sort of taking into account enough of the community concerns and the community focus, end up kind of creating a shadow right across the full list of providers. I'd start off by saying, like, I totally understand and appreciate the anxieties that people have towards the risks or the challenges of this infrastructure. But then to your point about sort of dispelling the myths, right? Like, I think, and I'll speak explicitly to how CoreWeave approaches it as a key factor. From the biggest sort of concerns I think that come out, energy being sort of a big one, and sort of energy pricing, and one of the biggest things that we've done is a real focus on making sure that we are investing ahead of those energy prices, right? So the opportunity to advance and improve the electrical grid in this country is real, right? I think it's an important need for us, sort of without even the data center expansion. But then the sort of opportunity for CoreWeave to take a big position in helping to expand that, and that sort of being a part of the investments that we make in many of these locations is part of the investment that we make to expand and improve the grid, such that the residents aren't bearing that burden. And of course, we don't have anything to do with the pricing of the electrical grid, right? And so it is that they're typically regulated and controlled and sort of operate in that way. And so I do think that is an important consideration and an important place, I think, for us to constantly think about how to improve. Again, the bad actors point, make sure that the providers are supporting the infrastructure improvements as required in some of these build outs. You already mentioned water, right? We used a fully closed loop system, which not all the providers do, but so we have basically an initial intake of water. It's about equivalent to maybe 2 days of watering a golf course. And then we're done, right? We don't take any more water in other than just the people who are, going to the bathroom or drinking water and running the facility, right? So there's no additional water that comes in. And then noise, right? I think, the other thing is we do a lot of work to be able to shield communities from the noise, and even just the steady state of noise is quite low. And about the regulations in the state, in New Jersey specifically, which I just happen to know particularly well, right? The low end of the noise is around sort of the hum of a refrigerator, and then the high end of the noise is maybe a bustling office, right? And so with the right protections and the right sort of controls in place, we feel like, again, good actors can help avoid the impact to the community, while then also bringing jobs and bringing education. One of the things that CoreWeave CoreWeave has just recently launched CoreWeave University, where we come in and actually educate people in those districts on sort of how to operate the environment, right? So we actually have a program where we'll hire from local community individuals, and we'll train them and teach them on the job, and sort of make them capable in this new set of skills in operating and being a technician in the environment. And so, I think there are benefits that are missed, and I think the impact is oftentimes misconstrued, right? I think is maybe the best way to put it. But then all of this, of course, is in the deep awareness that like communities have a right to raise concerns, and we should be listening, and we should constantly be getting better. Like that is the beauty of the type of systems of government we have here. And so, I'm super supportive on the feedback and making sure that communities have this voice, and that voice is heard.
And thank you for explaining that. That was really helpful. And regarding the communities, it's so impressive that CoreWeave University, I hadn't heard about that before, but I know you're very involved in New Jersey with the New Jersey AI Hub.
Yeah.
Talk about that and maybe what you do in other communities around the country and maybe internationally as far as engagement to really help further retraining, upskilling, startups. The explosion in startups is something that I think you guys are sort of supporting.
Yeah, that's right. So there's a few things to say. First of all, with the New Jersey AI Hub, I mean, I actually get to be the board member from CoreWeave as part of the hub, and that's been such an honor. I mean, it has been so wonderful. In fact, you can see behind me, I've got the orange ribbon for when I cut the ribbon, which I hold in sort of this prominent location behind my camera here. So I should really get it framed or something, but it's been such a great experience. Obviously getting Microsoft being one of the other co-founders of the hub and people that I used to work with. And so that's been really fun to kind of bring those connections in. And then, obviously getting to work with the EDA, I think they've been just so focused on New Jersey development, and to your point, sort of the focus on training and focus on being able to enable this startup community, this innovative community, and to entice them to come to New Jersey, which I think is great. And we've got some amazing, the state of New Jersey has some amazing, enterprises and amazing sort of technology sectors, whether it be pharmaceuticals, whether it be communications, whether it be energy itself. And so I think being able to now entice some of this innovation, some of these startups who are leading the way with AI, whether on the AI platform offered by CoreWeave or other platforms, is sort of not the point. Being able to create this sort of additional ecosystem here in the state is so great for the state, for CoreWeave, for everybody. And that's been a big factor and really the focal point that I've had with the AI Hub. Obviously, it does. The Princeton connection is really great, and the Princeton focus has been also around enabling this within universities and schools, which I also find really quite compelling. And so for me, I think that combination of like the university, the industry, and sort of the education, and bringing all of that together in a single emotion has been really quite inspiring. And to your point, in other communities, like there's a couple things there. One, the New Jersey AI Hub has actually become the model that we now go out there and people ask us, well, you're coming here, you're building here, like tell us a little bit about how you can kind of engage the community. And we always point to the New Jersey AI Hub as being a good example of something where you've got public, private, university coming together in this sort of powerful three-way thing, sort of government involvement as well. And we use it as sort of the example of where that can really drive innovation. And we go to different communities, and maybe one community has a big automotive market, and so that would be where the automotive AI companies should go, right? Versus pharma, which should come here. And so there's already this sort of regional opportunity that I think we could just tap into. Versus today, it feels like all of the AI startups go to one place, or all of the technology startups go to one place. And I think the opportunity is quite real to bring them into their sort of centers of excellence around the country. And I like the idea of CoreWeave playing a key role. We've also launched a program called CoreWeave Ventures, where we are directly investing in startups around the country and around the world in who are doing AI work and sort of interesting AI innovation. And so that's sort of a separate effort. It's not New Jersey specific, but it is an effort to bring some of that innovation to life.
That's great to hear. And we'll put that link in the show notes if that's okay, so people can learn about that. Are you domestic or do you have locations around the world?
We do. Yeah, we do. Yeah, we have a bunch of locations in Europe, and Canada, and a lot of international expansion underway. So yes, that's been a very fun and exciting and interesting part of the role as well.
Yeah, no, I can only imagine.
Yeah.
That could be a whole other show. But speaking of international and trends and things, what are you seeing out there as far as and we see the fight for the frontier models, right? Each one getting better on a week by week or month by month basis, right? And that's interesting. And then we see a lot of stuff moving to the edge, right? Moving to devices, right? Or potentially moving more to devices. And then you have other actors around the world who have lower cost models, open weight models. And so I'm just curious, how do you see that from your perch?
Yeah. I mean, I think we are definitely seeing that inference demand, really an inflection point, probably starting at the beginning of this year, where inference demand has become unrelenting. I mean, it is so indicative of that the application era of AI has come, right? I would say up until January this year, it was the research era, right? It was the sort of and maybe the consumer era, right? People engaging with their chatbots and so on. But I believe we have entered into the application era where services and solutions are being actively built and deployed. I also think with that comes a level of complexity. And so a little bit to your point, I think the idea that applications are going to have a single model that they use for everything, I think is actually a false expectation. Like, I think we will see applications be built with a complexity of models. You'll use 30 or 40 different models to deliver one, relatively complex mission critical application. And in some cases, you will use the frontier models, right? Of which, again, many of them are running on CoreWeave infrastructure to serve those experiences. And so you'll use those for some aspects. Let's say your deepest analytics, perhaps. But then in many cases, you will want to use perhaps something that maybe you can improve yourself. Right? You may want to use, like you said, an open source model that then you want to make specific to your data, right? So train specifically to your information, or tweak or sort of use very bespoke models or very particular models for specific parts of your workflow. You're doing gene folding. It may turn out that it would be better to use a model specifically focused on gene folding than just using the frontier sort of does everything Swiss Army knife model, right? Whether it be for performance or cost or experience. And so I believe the combination of these models are all going to come together into single apps. And so there's not, like, I think people are constantly looking for, well, who's going to be the winner, or which models is going to win, or is open source going to win, or is, and I actually, the answer is yes to all of it for me, because I think it will be a combination of all those things. And this is where, when I think about where CoreWeave and where I want to go add a lot of this value is helping customers get there to their application, right? The step between I want to do this and now I'm going to build it this way is a big leap right now. I think it's very hard for people to think through. It's like, well, what model should I use and how do I get there? And just like any other application development, I think it's going to be constant iteration, continual loop. And so how do we build the tools so that you can understand how your model's doing in production, understand when you're evaluating these 6 different models, which one gives you a better cost, even if it may be worse results. And then if it worse results, which part of my app can I deal with worse results because I don't really care, versus which parts, no, they better be the right results. And so I'll take it maybe a little bit more expensive or a little bit slower. to get the better results. And so this type of evaluation and analysis, these are all tools that we offer and capabilities that we offer as part of the CoreWeave platform. And so I think that's where we'll see a lot of really good innovation. And right now, I think it's just a hard bridge. It's a hard step to get there for a lot of people who didn't grow up in this world, who aren't working at those frontier labs and aren't experts at this. And that's, I think, the opportunity for a company like CoreWeave to be able to create that bridge and make it just much easier to get to that outcome.
Oh, wow. Okay. I'm glad you explained that. You did mention inference, and for those folks who don't know what inference means, can you just explain that?
Yeah. Sorry, I should have explained that. Yeah. See, I mean, in the AI world, in some ways, it's broken down into two big buckets. One is training, which is taking either starting from scratch or taking a model and making it better, and that's sort of taking a whole bunch of data and feeding it in and sort of having it learn, right? And we actually model a bunch of this, and obviously I'm going to prove my depth here. We model a lot of this in a very similar way to the way brains work. And in fact, you can sort of think about it, the way brains work is you have sort of neural pathways, billions of them in your brain, and the pathways that get hit the most get stronger, and the pathways that get hit less get weaker. And that's how we remember things. That's how we learn things, right? We remember, we do math enough that those pathways get strong. And so then we're able to just instinctively go down that path and say, well, 4 plus 4, well, that's 8, right? And so it's a very similar mental model in sort of how to think about how training works in AI, right? It's basically, it runs through billions and trillions even of sort of iterations, and that burns these paths, or weights, as people like to call them. And that then becomes what path is most likely to be run when you ask a question, right? When you ask a question, that's the path that, oh, you asked about sporting events. Okay, well, the most likely path now for sporting events right now is, let's talk about the World Cup, right? And so that becomes a similar sort of, it's been burned in. So that's the training side. But then the inferencing side is actually taking those weights, taking that burned path, and then running it, right? And so when the question comes up, hey, how is the U.S. likely to do tomorrow, right? And so that then becomes, well, the U.S., well, what could that mean? And so it runs the paths that most likely, the U.S. today, based on everything that's happening on the internet, most likely means the World Cup. So it means the U.S. national team. Okay, are they playing tomorrow? Okay, who are they playing tomorrow? And it then follows all of that pathway that had been burned in the training and comes to the most likely answer as part of it. And by the way, I'm way oversimplifying. There's tons of math and like multi-dimensional metrics and so on. But that, to me, so that's the difference between training and inferencing. There's a bunch of different ways to do inferencing, right? You can do it as an agent that basically will, take your calls and go run some code and maybe call some tools to help, like a search tool to look up, hey, what's interesting right now? But then you can also just run it as a simple sort of command and response. And then there's a lot of different ways to do training, right? There's the original base model training, but then there's also a concept called reinforcement learning, where it's very similar even to how we learn sports. You do it enough and your muscles get memory, and that's sort of one typical type of training. So anyway, I've gone off track, but hopefully that helps, Jim.
That was super helpful. Thank you so much. This has been a great conversation, Corey. Thank you for doing it. We usually do just one things, short clips. So one prediction for, the AI ecosystem over the next couple of years?
Yeah, I mean, given we're seeing this inflection point from January, I think every app and every experience that we have will have AI integrated within the next 2 years.
Got it. What about, are you concerned about data centers in space?
Concerned? I mean, I think, currently the data centers have a significant operational burden, right? They do require quite a few people. As I mentioned, I did want to be an astronaut, and so I would be willing to maybe spend some time working up there. I'm not sure you want to see me in a spacesuit, though. But I do think right now there's enough power worldwide that it's not a top priority. But certainly as the sort of overall market shifts and as demand continues to grow, we don't discount any ideas as bad ones. But certainly a lot of things would need to change to make things work in a space environment.
Got it. One last thing. When do you think AGI will come?
Oh gosh, that's a tough one, Jim. Um, you know, part of it is also I find that there's a lot of different definitions for AGI, which again for your audience is just sort of artificial general intelligence, basically. I think right now the focus in research has really been on sort of incremental improvements and then task specific AI opportunities. And I think the combination of these are going to deliver so much value that, at this point, I don't see it in the near term. Like I think that there's, in some ways, a research step that's required that probably requires us to think about the entire model differently. But I'm not sweating it because I think the amount of improvements we can make to our day-to-day lives with the technology as it continues to evolve right now is mind-blowing. And so I am just so enthusiastic about what customers can do with what we've got today and will have over the next 6 months that to a certain extent, I'm not sweating the timeline for AGI. If it happens to be a year, great. Like I look forward to then what customers can build on top of it. If it happens to be 10 years, like I still think the world in which we live is changing, and I think it is so exciting to get to be able to be in the front row seat to that.
So you bring up something really interesting. Should we assume that when there is AGI, that the usage, the demands will be greater on data centers?
It's super hard to say, Jim, because it all depends on, so much of this also depends on just the way that the research goes. I think research on optimizations, research on being able to run with a lower infrastructure footprint to accomplish the same task has been really exciting research over the last year, right? And we're seeing significantly scaled back models that can do a lot as compared to what, 2 years ago, right? And so at a point in time, at the moment that AGI comes out, it will almost certainly be an uptick in the sort of raw amount of infrastructure required. Will it be able to then parallelize more because of its capabilities? Maybe, right? And then will there be a path of optimization? Certainly. And if AGI lives up to its expectations, maybe it will do its own optimizations, right? And so, I think that there's a path there to think about. And so, this is going to be a constant pull and push on sort of driving the optimizations while also making sure that frontier research continues to develop. And again, I think both are going to deliver huge value to all of us.
That's great. Thank you for that clarification. This has been a great conversation, Corey. We usually end with a quote or a saying or a poem. What do you have for us?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, there's a quote that I really, really like, and it turns out there's some debate. I think Harry Truman said it, but then Ronald Reagan also said it. So I'm happy to give both credit and try and be very bipartisan here in my response. But the quote goes something like this: it is amazing what you can accomplish if you do not care who gets the credit. And I believe it is such a meaningful statement over the challenges of human nature. Like, by the way, this is not something that I feign to totally live up to. I love getting credit for things. Let's just be clear. This is not like I have perfected this, but I want to. This is a way that I want to live my life, that I want to be okay, that anyone can get the credit. And because then you do reach this point where you can accomplish so much more if you really don't care. And I find it such a strong statement to what really matters in life. And so, it's hard. Humans want to get credit. You want to get the credit for things that you did well, and sometimes even things that someone else did well. And so that's a challenge. But that's a quote I love to say. And again, I think both Harry Truman and Ronald Reagan said variations of it.
Yeah, no, that's a great way to end. Thank you so much, Corey. I really appreciate you doing this.
Thank you, Jim.
Look forward to collaborating with you in the ecosystem.
I appreciate it. Yeah, it's been fun working with you, and thanks so much. And happy to come back and talk more whenever you want.
Thanks for joining us. I hope you enjoyed the show. Please like it, leave a review, and subscribe. See you soon.